Welcome, listeners and viewers, if you're watching this on YouTube, to the very first podcast of this channel, and actually the very first podcast that I have ever done. It's Bravo Config 99, and today we're going to be talking about getting a job in tech in 2025. And this will also be relevant rolling into 2026 as well. As it is the first podcasting, let's do a little bit of an introduction on who I am and where I'm at, and also what's to come with this podcast. So, my name is Rich, and I am the operator of Bravo Config 99, a new channel that I've set up on YouTube and TikTok to document my journey in tech. I'm based in Australia, and my current role is a IT network and systems technician. So what we're going to be doing is talking about breaking into tech in 2025, going into 2026. And that's who this episode's really going to be aimed at, and also for people considering a tech career, whether they're switching from whatever it is they're doing and they're thinking about going into tech. I think you'll get some value from this. Students as well who are unsure on where to start, and really anyone feeling stuck or just looking for a practical real world pathway into IT. So that's a little bit of an intro. I'm going to keep these beginning episodes pretty short because I want you to be able to listen to them when you're commuting to work or walking the dog, and get as much from it as possible. So they're going to be fairly short, no more than about 15 minutes. So let's have a look then. If we talk about first the state of the tech market right now and where it's at. So let me explain what I think is happening. I've not been in the tech industry that long. I broke into the tech industry at the beginning of this year, but I've also always had a sort of keen eye on what's going on. So I was been speaking recently to some of my friends who are network engineers at a senior level in the UK, and we've been having discussions because a lot of what people are talking about now in the IT tech market space is AI and what's going to happen with AI. Are you worried about trying to sort of start an IT career and at the same time thinking, well, AI's here, I don't stand a chance? Let's talk about it. So AI, it is booming. I am looking at some notes on my computer, by the way, as we go through this, with a can of Pepsi, ice cold. Also, as well, we're having a massive rainstorm here in Australia, so if you do hear the crashing of thunder and rain hitting against the window, I do apologise. Anyway, back to the job market. So AI is booming, but remember this: if you're like me and you wanted to get into IT, remember the network space is still alive and kicking massively. Infrastructure, IT support, they're all in demand still. And one thing that is definitely certain with AI is no one can really tell you exactly what's going to happen. Yes, it is going to change the workforce. I think it's going to reduce some teams in certain sort of levels of IT support, and I think it will increase teams in another level. But I have noticed, even in the short space of time since applying, when I sort of entered the job market, and we are going to go back to how to get into the job market, I'm just talking about the state of it at the minute. I have noticed, even in the short space of time that I've been here working in IT, that they are skills like Python, automation, are really sort of entering roles at lower levels. So it's almost like the market's been squeezed a little bit because they're expecting more from people now who are applying. They're expecting you to know more, to have more under your belt, to be able to do more. That is definitely something that I think is happening. So it's something to consider as well if you are looking at breaking into tech, just what it is that you need now at certain levels. And let's not forget, AI and all this sort of stuff. Some industries and some organisations may not be ready to deploy it, on their premises if they are using their premises rather than the cloud, and they're still going to be heavily relying on those network engineers or people with networking skills to maintain the operations day to day for those organisations. So yes, I think AI is having an effect, and it's the big buzzword at the minute. I think it's squeezing the job market in terms of it's asking, employers are asking more from IT professionals or people who are trying to get into IT, but we're not certain on how it's really going to affect the job market. Okay, and automation, that's a big key takeaway. Automation is definitely creeping in, skills like Python. Anyway, let's just roll back a little bit, because like I said, I want to keep this short, and why I chose to get a job and shift careers into tech. So I think I should explain my situation a little bit. I am 32 years old, and previous to the job that I'm in now, I served in the army as electronics warfare systems operator, which was a technical trade in the army. I came out after about 7 years, worked on the railway as a telecommunications and network technician, and then I moved to Australia, and for about 4 years had temporary crap jobs, to be honest with you, and it was sort of, I was thinking, right, now is the time I actually want to focus myself again. We're a little bit more settled in Australia, and I want to get into that tech market, because I see down the line 5-10 years, I still think there's going to be big potential in tech. And also in tech, it requires a lot of studying, and if you're a disciplined individual, I believe that you can get quite far in it. I know people who are in tech, who are in cybersecurity, who are network engineers and consultants. So I've got a good good range of people who are close to me to talk to, and it just made sense for me to go into tech, fully focused, use some of those skills that I had previously used sort of in the armed forces and the railway, and now zone in on IT and networking. So that was my reason for moving into tech. How I actually got a tech job. So what you're finding at the low levels is incredibly competitive, and it is completely swamped. It's swamped with people who are just applying for everything. It's swamped with people who have probably overqualified and can't get something. It's a really hard place to be, actually stepping into IT and getting that first job. I found it a challenge. So I'm just going to break down how I did it. Basically, I was working in an insurance job, and then I was actually working in construction, and had an accident in construction where I hurt my back, had surgery. Excuse me. Just a bit more of my Pepsi. I had surgery, and I was just like, you know what? I really just want to focus my energy now on something worthwhile, and that's why I went into tech. But I had to get a job when I recovered from surgery. I was out of action for a long time, and that was why I got the insurance job. I really enjoyed it. Worked for a luxury watch insurer and ring insurer, but I was doing the sort of retention. Anyway, regardless of that, it wasn't what I wanted to do long term. So spoke to a few people, and I thought, you know what, maybe I should study and actually get a certification, because I don't have a tech job, but I can study. So I studied CCNA, and then just as I started studying for CCNA, I actually saw that Cisco had brought out another certification called the Cisco Certified Support Technician. And I looked at the sort of criteria, the blueprint for that exam. It was much shorter than CCNA, and the CCST, the Cisco CCST, is designed to come before CCNA. So it's a good stepping stone into CCNA. And I looked at the CCNA and I saw the criteria, and I looked at the CCST, I looked at the criteria. It was a lot less, but I saw that you actually learn about things like subnetting. And that was a big thing that I'd heard in the CCNA, where people got quite hung up on it. So I thought, you know what? If CCST is a shorter course and it covers subnetting, I'll do that, and then I'll roll into CCNA. And that's exactly what I did. I would finish work at about 5 o'clock. I'd get back at about 5:30, because I lived quite close. And then I would study for 2.5 hours, maybe 3-4 times a week. And then I would hit it hard on the weekend with probably a minimum of 5 hours on the weekend. And that would consist of, I actually used CBT Nuggets, which was an online learning platform, which I paid for. And I thought, if I pay for it, then I'm actually going to sit down and really get my money's worth. And I stand by that, because we can study with open source material on YouTube, but it's so easy to go down a rabbit hole and get distracted. So I literally studied like I was at school. I sat down with my CBT Nuggets instructor, whoever it was, and I would go through a topic, and at the end of that topic I would consolidate all my notes, write what I'd learned. And they also had virtual labs on their site to practice the command lines of configuring switches and routers and all sorts. So found that really, really beneficial doing the CCST into CCNA, because when I started the CCNA, I knew how to subnet, I knew the very, very basics of networking. And it was just a much more comfortable way of learning CCNA. Now, the reason why I actually went down the whole CCNA path in the first place was just because I found that Cisco CCNA as an entry-level certification held the most weight. Still to this day, even though people do sometimes say now that there are other things out there that are becoming just as sort of worthy, what with cloud technologies and AWS and Azure. But for me, understanding the fundamentals of networking, which is what I wanted so much. I wanted to, because I'd always dabbled in tech, but I'd never really scratched below the surface. And I thought, I want to know now how it works so I can fix it. I just want to understand it so I can have a conversation with somebody and contribute to something. And that's why I went for CCNA, because I looked at the syllabus, I saw the amount of topics, I saw what it went into, and I thought, if I come out of that knowing those topics, then I will feel good. So studied CCNA. Took me about 5 months. Actually failed it the first time. Had a really bad experience. Took it at home, and had a few tech issues, which is ironic, isn't it? But I booked it again for the next week and passed it. So that's how I got my certification. Now, interestingly, which I will come on to, I actually got my first tech job before passing CCNA. I told them on the interview, I said, look, I'm 90% into my CCNA. I will have it by the end of the month. I hope you will consider me for the role, because I feel like I can bring a lot. So just bear in mind, you can get employed in a tech role before getting these certifications. However, you will need to show that you are keen, you have got some experience, and this is how I got my experience. So I managed to get my hands on 3 Cisco routers and 3 Cisco switches and a Cisco IP phone system. I found them on Facebook Marketplace for $140, I think it was. And I thought that could be my physical home lab. Now, I used to do the virtual labs on Cisco Packet Tracer, where I would practice, configuring the labs and, just putting into practice what I'd learned. But getting your hands on the actual kit and seeing how it behaves is extremely valuable, in my opinion. And not only that, you can start to add things to it. So, you might have a Raspberry Pi, you might have an old PC, an access point, a spare router. You can start adding to it. And I've had a few projects on my home lab, but it was something that I could talk about in the interviews, put on my resume and on my cover letter. What I was doing on my home lab, deploying spanning tree, deploying OSPF, fault finding. So it definitely added a lot of value. And to this day, I'm still tinkering around with it. I say to this day, like I've been doing networking for years. I haven't, but I'm still tinkering around with it now. So the home lab helped me get the experience, to get the job, even though I hadn't passed CCNA. But just learning those topics on the CCNA syllabus gives you an incredible amount to talk about, in terms of a technical conversation with somebody. So yeah, now I'm going to talk to you about resumes and applications, because I think this is extremely important if you are trying to land that first tech job. You need to treat CCNA, if that's the path you want to go down, as your primary job. So you do so if you're like me, you'll be in a day job which you don't want to be in. So unfortunately, to that employer, you have to look after yourself first. I would honestly treat it as your second job, even though you are going there every day, and treat CCNA as your first job. What I mean about that is everything you think about, every bit of spare time you have, whatever it is, it's to do with CCNA. You're almost just turning up to your day job because you have to turn up, just do the work, but you're conserving all your energy for CCNA. That is how I looked at it. And it paid off massively. Now, your resume and your applications, they need to be completely unique when you are applying to an employer. Do not do the standard, same cover letter, same resume or CV for different tech jobs. Don't. You have to tailor it, because they are red and they will want different things. They are different types of companies, and you have to put unique applications in, is my opinion. Also, previous jobs, I was in the military. I did some work in telecoms as well. I made sure that they knew about that. If you have anything that is, of relevance, make sure you are letting them know about it. The home lab, that can be put down on your cover letter. Talk about, it shows you're enthusiastic. It shows you're serious as well. It shows you know how to handle a switch, a router. It shows you know what they look like. It shows you can deal with cable faults, Ethernet cables, terminating those cables. So you can make a lot, from not much, if that's the situation that you're in. Another thing that I did is I actually printed off 500 leaflets when I had got my CCST and was still studying for CCNA. 500 leaflets offering my services voluntarily as IT support, even if it was cleaning the equipment, cable management, and I delivered them to churches, I delivered them to youth clubs, charities, and I didn't get a call. No one called me back. But you know what? It's something that at least I can say I had done when I was looking for that tech job. I was covering all bases. So that's definitely, it just shows you, for me, I was serious about it. And I want people to know I'm serious about it. So that's just what I had to do. Even though it didn't work, I couldn't afford not to do it, just in case something did come from that. Maybe I passed that to someone who's got an IT business, who's looking for an entry-level, IT support guy. You just do not know who you're going to bump into when you do stuff like that, or who's going to see it. LinkedIn. Transform that LinkedIn profile 100%. Doesn't matter how small it is, doesn't matter what steps you're taking. You now need to get into a different environment which is surrounded by IT and tech network geeks who are talking about stuff. You need to see what the conversations are. Those things do pay off. I believe they do pay off. I spend a little bit of every single day looking at the home screen on LinkedIn just to see what people are talking about. It keeps you relevant, keeps you up to date, and also there's connections there as well. I've already got a call booked in with somebody to do a bit of mentoring on my situation. So, yeah, look, that is over time already. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more in another podcast, the next one, about my job as an IT systems and network technician. But for now, we're going to leave it there. And that was your first podcast on getting a job in tech in 2025. See you later.